What if the only thing standing between you and your next client, your next 10K, your next big break or opportunity for your visibility was a stage? Well, you're in luck because in this episode, I'm talking to Tony Award-winning producer, documentary filmmaker, and entrepreneur Nick Demos, and he is dropping pure gold. We're talking how to crush your nerves when you're speaking on stage, how to craft a killer signature talk that you're known for, how to sell from the stage without sounding salesy or slimy or gross, and how to actually get paid to speak on a stage, even if you've never done it before. Where do you start? Who do you talk to? And what do you have to focus on to become truly magnetic on stage? Because I'm telling you right now, it's not the things that you think. And it all starts with storytelling. Who doesn't have great stories? And if you're someone who thinks you don't have that interesting a story to tell, trust me, you're gonna wanna tune into this episode because we will crush that. We will show you why you have way more stories than you ever even realized. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Here is my conversation with Nick. Welcome to the Camera Confident Podcast. Welcome, Nick. It's so great to have you here on the Camera Confident Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you so much for having me.
I can't wait to get to all things storytelling and stage. But before we do that, we always start the podcast with your elevator pitch. So why don't you tell us, for those of who are listening, those people who are listening who don't know who you are. Let me start that again. So for those who don't know who you are, why don't you tell us, who is Nick Demos?
So I'm going to go a little unconventional here.
Ooh, I love it.
Pitch. Picture this. You standing on a stage, owning it with such power and such grace. You feel the energy of that audience responding to every word you have to say. I help you get there and make sales from the stage.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. You just demonstrated this whole conversation in less than 30 seconds. I love it. So let's reverse engineer that. Tell us what you just did and why.
Yeah, so what I did was I turned it into a story. And I made that story about you rather than about me. Because while I am the guide, I'm the one here that is going to help you share your stories on stage. What I did was I had you in the visioning space, picturing yourself in it so that you would want to work with me to get there.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest mistake that I see so many, particularly entrepreneurs, service-based businesses, people who are looking for clients. They talk all about themselves. They do this in videos as well. It's all about me. Look at what I did. Look what I'm doing. And yes, people do want to know about you, but ultimately, if you think about it in terms of the hero's journey, if people know, that whole side of marketing, the hero is not you. The hero is the audience, right?
Yeah, this is, not only in marketing and all storytelling for marketing, all storytelling that is related to marketing. You must remember that the audience, your audience, is the hero, shero of the story. You are the guide. You are the one that helps them on their path. And when you learn that, when you tune into that and you click into that, ultimately, it shifts everything in your marketing, and it shifts the way in which people view you, which is really important. They need to know that they're the one that you're helping, that they can connect to what it is that you're offering. And the only way they do that is when they see themselves in the story.
I think this is a tough one for a lot of particularly business owners to wrap their heads around because they're so busy trying to figure out what they offer people. So can you kind of peel that onion a bit for me? What does that actually mean to have someone see themselves in the story?
Yeah. So there's actually science behind this. The brain of a person telling a story and the brain of the listener actually sync. It's called neurocoupling. Yeah. And so the more that you can position yourself not as this story's about me, but the more that you can position it that you're sharing a story that's about them, they can see themselves in the story. And when somebody can see themselves in and visualize themselves, then they own it. they take it on and they want to be that story.
So one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you on the podcast is because I think you and I are kind of like peanut butter and jelly, right? Like I'm the video version and you're the stage in-person version. And there's a lot of similarities, right? The storytelling aspect, the person, the audience seeing themselves in the story. But a stage talk is a very different thing than video. With video, I'm in front of the camera, and there obviously is a whole lot we do as speakers on camera, and I talk all about that. But can you give us a little glimpse into the world of the in-person speaker? Because particularly since the pandemic, which is long behind us, but a lot of people are only now really starting to go out, get on stages. They want to be in front of more people. They're craving that connection. So talk to us about what do you see as the most important aspects of being a really good stage speaker?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is that you've got to own yourself. I think, and that is also on camera too, but you've got to know yourself, because when you're on stage, you're putting yourself into basically fight or flight situations. There is no edit. There is no stop the camera. Let's start again. Let's do that. You don't have it. So really learning to control the nervous system is vital for stage work in a way that maybe isn't as vital for camera. Yes, you need to control your nerves from camera, but on stage, there is no safety net. So really, that's the first thing to really focus on, is working on your breath, working on the support, the control, all of those things. I recently did a talk that you were at, and I actually got nervous, which is rare for me now, but it does happen. And I really stopped and I took a breath, and I actually asked the audience to take a breath with me, because I realized that I was up, like way up high. And rather than deep into my breath and into my body, embodiment of the self is key to stage work. Really being in the body. So grounding down, using the breath, using these tools so that you can be so comfortable with who you are. One of the things about stage is that, particularly when you're as a speaker, but as an actor too, is really being comfortable with who you are. It's a self actualization process, the stage, of really owning every ounce of you, all your flaws, all the good, all of it, and being able to be fully present with it. That's the difference. Because honestly, after you learn structure, after you learn the basics of storytelling, the difference between a good speaker and a great speaker is their ability to be completely who they are, to be themselves.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I know you speak about it so openly, but you and I hadn't known each other that well when I first saw you on stage. And I remember the moment you came out, I thought, oh, he's nervous. And it was really surprising to me, like Tony Award-winning speaker, like this guy is the guy that I want to learn from. And there was something so comforting about knowing that it happens to everyone. It happens to me too. Sometimes I'll get nervous when I'm going live or going on camera, and people ask me, they're like, why do you still get nervous? Those butterflies, that fight or flight never goes away. You just learn how to deal with it. But what I loved about what you did, and I remember really watching closely to be like, oh, he's loosening up. But even after you stepped into like the real Nick, you still referenced back to the beginning in a way that forced people to kind of go back to that moment and acknowledge that that happened. And it made you so human, and it almost made it feel like part of it. And we felt closer to you because of that.
That's vulnerable, right? I actually just called it out. I said, you all, I'm nervous. And it put the audience at ease too, because anybody that knew that I was quote unquote the expert and I was supposed to have it all together, and then I was a little rattled, for whatever reason, that then I put the audience at ease, and it was just authentic. It was real. Again, that being real, being who you are in the moment is so important for the stage.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to get into the structure piece, but just to kind of put a bow on that nerves part, what are your top tips for people who are, whether they're going on an actual stage in front of people they don't know, or they're going on stage in front of maybe some people they do know, which I think this was part of the issue in the talk that I went to, is you knew so many people in the audience, and it wasn't like you were talking to strangers, you were talking to peers. So how do you advise people to deal with those nerves that almost get the best of you before you even have a chance to get out there?
I mean, obviously there's tips and tools. I have a whole warm up where I dance backstage and I breathe and I do all of these things to get into the body before I step out. But I think the thing to remember is that it's not about you. And that's what happened in that moment. I suddenly turned it and made it about me. How am I going to look to these peers? How am I going to be? What are they going to think of me? Rather than how am I in service to who's in the audience right now? And when you can flip that and not make it about you, all those nerves sort of dissipate in a way. They go away because it isn't about you at the end of the day. It's about you're the vessel, you're the channel, you're the one who's sharing the information. You're the one who's the catalyst for their change, Again, you're the guide, you're not the hero. If you can get out of being the hero of the story, the nerves have a tendency to fall away.
And when you can get control of your breathing, then you can start to take control of that. The other thing about just in terms of technique is breathing is also a critical part of delivery. And on stage, one thing that I really have learned from you is how important movement is. So can you talk a little bit about that sort of, when you're doing yoga, for instance, the breath anchors everything you do and you move with the breath. So I mean, obviously there's some demonstration part of this, but if you could just talk a little bit about how you incorporate breath and movement into a stage talk.
Nearly exactly what you just said. Breath and movement in yoga, right? The breath leads the movement in yoga. It's the same on stage. The breath leads the movement. The intention leads the movement. You don't move just to move. You move if there's intention. What is the reason that you're moving? Is it to make a point? Is it to come closer to the audience to draw them in? Do you back away so they have to come more to you? There's psychology behind the why you're moving.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's so much more. We don't have time in one podcast to get into it, and that would be like an exciting episode just to talk about breath and movement. I want to think about two different types of people who may be watching and listening. The first is, I've never done a stage talk in my life. I'm interested in getting into this, both to increase my visibility, to get my name out there more, to attract more clients. And then there are others who really want to get paid to speak on stage. So let's start with the first avatar, just, growing your profile and visibility. What do you advise in terms of what should your first talk be about? How do you prepare for that? And what would you advise them to do to get started?
The first question to ask yourself is, what is the problem that I solve? While a talk, most people, the biggest mistake that early speakers make, and I'm saying speaker general, whether you're an entrepreneur who wants to speak for sales, or if you're wanting to be a pro speaker, is they make the talk about them, their story. They have a desire to share their story. That's typically what happens. But a speech, in this case, a talk, is actually a marketing tool at the end of the day. It's really about what's in it for the audience. So really ask yourself, what is the problem that your audience is facing, and what is the solution that you're offering? Your talk is pointing out the problem that they're facing so they know that this talk's for them, and then the solution that you provide and how you provide it. That's your talk. And your story needs to be a part of that solution.
Mm-hmm. So let's break down the anatomy of a talk. I know you have a whole framework on how you incorporate story, and I was excited to hear that. And I think you talked for 90 minutes. We don't have 90 minutes. So maybe you can give us the Coles Notes version of how you approach planning and structuring a talk, especially your first talk, where you're like, okay, this is my signature talk. First time I'm doing it, getting my feet wet, butterflies and all.
So it really does, like I said, start with that problem solution, right? And When you're structuring a talk, you obviously need a hook, an opener, just like you do on camera, right? If you don't get them in those first few minutes, you've lost them, and then you're scrambling for the next, if it's a 90-minute talk, for the next 90 minutes to get them back. So, ouch, right? On a video, at least it goes by pretty quickly. No, you're up there, and so you've got to get them back. So losing them at the beginning is not good. So immediate hook opener, something that really grabs their attention. Then, after that, you're going to want to lay out for them what is the problem that they're facing, right? Again, making it about them and their issues and their struggles. Then you're going to lay out for them the theme. What is this talk going to be about? Yes, it's about the problem, but how? How is it going to be about the problem? And you kind of tell them, okay, here's what it's going to be about. And then you transition into those talking points. It may be, if you have a framework, this is where you share your framework solution. Maybe it's 3 to 5 points that you have and how you help. And within that, you infuse story. Every single talking point needs a story of some kind to illustrate and prove the points that you're making. Because what I didn't mention before, that the 3 to 5, is that you have a core premise. You say, this is what the talk is about, and I'm going to now either prove or disprove this premise. And then those 3 to 5 talking points always refer back to that main theme that you're telling, so that at the end of the talk, you've proven that. You've proven that how your solution is the way, basically. Which, if you're doing your job right, by the way, that leads automatically to sales.
We're going to get into the sales piece for sure. One thing I know you've heard a million times, and I've heard a million times, is, but I don't have any interesting stories to tell. How do I know what stories I should be telling? And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is they don't have to be the epic, like, I had this trauma as a child and now I am where I am. So talk to us about, what is a story? What is a story anyway in your books?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that, in fact, sometimes it needs not be about trauma or drama, right? People relate to everyday stories. People relate to stories that they can see themselves in. And if they haven't experienced that trauma, they may not see themselves in that situation. They also relate to stories with wisdom, with a nugget of wisdom. Every great story has a lesson. All great stories, parables, think about all the way back, back to the Bible, biblical times. They were parables. They're stories with lessons. So as you're looking through your talk, you want stories with lessons that relate to what it is that you're sharing, what you're offering. Now, how do you get those, right? You're like, well, but how do I find those? There's so many ways to do that, but one of the things that I suggest is really going back into your life and thinking about about the lessons that you have learned. Who taught them to you? What did your grandmother teach you? What did your mother teach you? What did your father teach you? What did your third grade teacher teach you? There are lessons that you've learned over time. What jobs have you had? Because we all learn. I mean, I learned as a paper boy. What did you learn as a paper boy all the way back? What did you learn when you waited tables for that first time? What did you learn when you got into corporate, if you're in corporate? Like, there are these lessons on the path. And when you have what I call a story bank, you can then go in and say, that story, I can use that in this talk here, tweak it. Because the lesson is what's important. The lesson is what you want to focus on.
Yes. And I'm thinking there's also AI applications here. You can ask ChatGPT, I want to have this lesson, like, can you talk to me and ask me questions to extract those stories? And sometimes the more mundane the stories, the better. I was actually at a comedy show on the weekend, and I was actually paying attention to the stories that the comedians were telling on stage, which is like at the heart of comedy, is just like any stage appearance, but comedy is all about the story and relating. And all of the stories were these mundane at the grocery store, getting cut off by someone in the car. Like these stories don't even have to go back to your childhood. They can be literally something that happened on the way to work today, or, a conversation you had with your mother, or just anything. And sometimes those are the most powerful stories. But I love what you said about don't just tell any story, tell a story that has like a moral of the story, right? And that moral has to relate back to what it is that you're trying to teach or sell, right?
Correct. And that's the disconnect. Some people will be like, I know I need to use a story. So they just throw a story in that doesn't have a lesson, doesn't have a truth. It's the truth that you need to get to that's related to what it is that you're wanting to say. That's the important part. And yes, you're absolutely right. The more mundane, the better in many ways, because again, that's more relatable. We all go to the grocery store. We all have fights with our mother, right? These are things that are naturally part of life. And so we can see, again, going back to that idea, we can see ourselves in those stories.
One critical difference between being on camera and being on stage, and this is both maybe a good and a bad thing for some people, is that you can see the audience. You have that feedback. You get that real time. Is this landing? Is it not? Are they laughing? Are they on their phones? Like, talk a little bit about how you play off the audience. There's the best case scenario where they're like on the edge of their seat and they're nodding. But there's also what a lot of people experience, which is, scrolling on the phone, kind of some people could be sleeping. I mean, that's a hard part of being on a stage, isn't it?
You're having a conversation. It is not a one way. And the response that you're getting is simply information. And so if you can look at it as information, and then what you can do is adjust, right? If you're in the moment, if you're fully present, it goes back to that being in the body, being in the breath, being fully embodied in your truth. You can take the information you're receiving and respond to it. One of the great things about stage is it is automatic. And so therefore, if something's not landing, guess what? You get to pivot real quick. And you get to make change on the spot, on the fly. Now, you have to know your talk. This takes time and experience. But once you do, you can make changes literally as you're going based on what you're receiving back. Because yes, people are scrolling sometimes. People are falling asleep. You get an afternoon time slot in the, after people have just eaten lunch. These are all things that are real, and they're a little sleepy. These are all things that are real. So how do you gain that attention? How do you gain that trust? That's the question to ask yourself as you're receiving the response. Also, when people laugh, you get to have a response to that laugh. It is a conversation. And, that's where the improv thing comes in. I know my talk. I have a loose script. I don't memorize my talks, but I know it backwards and forwards. So that when somebody laughs or when somebody has a comment you'll get hecklers, you'll get all sorts of stuff, that I can then respond in real time without being thrown.
Without being thrown off. Exactly. That is so, so, so true.
And I will say really for me, because I am a live person, I actually find videos so much more difficult.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it really depends on what it is that you're doing, right? If you're going live on video, it's very similar to
live on video. I'm great because I get that live feedback.
There you go. Well, if people are watching, there's a lot of people who will go live on LinkedIn or live on YouTube, and one person shows up. How do you deal with that? So live on video is the closest thing. But with video, as you said, you can stop. You can do another take. When you're live, you're live.
But I have a tendency, if I'm not careful, and I've really worked on this in training and classes, and to not get into my head. I used to get into my head with the video because I would start thinking about it, overthinking. Rather on stage, I didn't have the time to overthink.
Right, you're just in it.
I'm in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing a live television appearance next week, and live TV, I mean, it's a form of stage. It's like stage and TV at the same time, and you're on, and you've got 5 minutes, So you got to process things and just go with the flow. And probably one of the worst things you can do, especially in a live interview situation, if you're on a TV show, or maybe let's say you're on a stage and you're doing a fireside chat or somebody's interviewing you, is be so in your head about what you have to say next that you're not actually listening to the question, or you're not actually taking what could be a gift in a question or a comment that you could then riff off of. So you never want to memorize whether you're on camera or on stage, because you're basically kind of handcuffing yourself to something. And if anything throws you off, which guaranteed it will. There is a 100% chance that something will throw you off of your memorized script, no matter, especially if it's a long talk, 90
That
minutes.
is the truth. There
So
is
like
100% chance.
100%, right? Always, always. Somebody's talking off set, something happens. I mean, there's just
Your nerves, can you imagine if I hadn't memorized it and then I got those nerves, it would, it wouldn't have been good.
no, no. Another thing I noticed about that talk that you gave, and one thing I really wanted to get to, because this applies whether you're an entrepreneur or a business trying to sell something, or whether you're doing something for corporate or a presentation to a group of people where you're just imparting knowledge or giving a presentation. Let's talk about slides, because one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is loading slides with so many words that the audience is focused on reading rather than listening. So, what's your guidance on the balance between providing visual cues and confirmation of what's being said, but not overloading your slides so much that people are kind of confused?
Yeah, I, not dissimilar to you, believe less is more. Less is more in this situation, because the tendency, as you said, is to overload it with information. Well, guess what? They're no longer listening to you. They're now looking at the screen and reading. You've totally lost them into that world. So, there are people that say that the 70-30 rule, 70% needs to be visual, 30% can be written. I'm less about the number, the percentage. I'm more about what is the intention of the slide. Why is it there? Slides are an enhancement. They are not the talk. And a lot of people want to put almost the entire talk on their slides. Now, part of it is it's a memory trick for some people, right? So that, in your confidence monitor in front of you, you can see the words. But guess what? That confidence monitor might go out, and it will. So you've got to know your talk without those slides. So whether you've got the slides or not, your talk needs to be so compelling that you don't need them.
Which can be really daunting for some people. The other thing I notice is that a lot of people, when they do have the slides where all the bullets are on, you just sit there and read it. And then you lose that whole connection with the audience. It's the same reason I tell people not to use teleprompters. And I get a lot of flack for that, because they're like, well, it's a long thing and I only have 20 minutes to record this. Like, I need a teleprompter. No, you need to get good at speaking without needing that exact wording. Because if you miss a word, or one of the other things people do is they'll say it differently than it's written on the slide. And then the audience has this disconnect between they're reading it, but it's not the same thing as what they're hearing. So then it doesn't land. So there's so many ways that slides and overcomplicated slides can actually hurt you rather than help you, right?
I completely agree. It's distraction. And it takes away from your presentation. And it takes away, most importantly, like you said, from the connection you're making with the audience. They didn't come to read slides. They came to hear you and to connect with you and to know you, so they can like you, so they can trust you, so they can buy from you.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of buying, I want to talk about two different types of revenue generating activities with public speaking. The first is selling your stuff. So let's say maybe you're not getting paid to speak. You get into a situation where your ideal client could be in the audience. How do you sell from the stage without being icky? And then we'll talk about the next one, which is how do you get paid to speak?
Yeah. Okay. So oftentimes you're not allowed to sell from the stage, because we all know when you go to something and they're just doing sales after sales after sales, it's really, it's icky for the audience member,
Yeah.
right?
You need a
So
shower afterwards.
yeah, you're just like, ah. So how do you sell without selling? That's really what we're talking about here. And that goes to the depth of your ability to point out the problem and offer a solution with a gap. And what I mean by the gap is that you've got to create a space where you give them enough information that they're like, oh, Shirley can help me, but not so much information that they're like, thanks, got it. See you later.
Oh,
I'm good. I'm full. Thank you so much, Shirley. You gave me everything I need, right? So creating that little gap is really the bridge to getting to getting that person. And you've got to do it though from the very beginning. I say this all the time. Your entrance is the beginning of the sales conversation.
what does that mean?
Meaning that the intention that you're stepping out on stage with is, yes, to help people, but your biggest is the call to action at the end. What are you wanting them to do? What do you want your audience to do? That's really what you've got to think when you're structuring your talk. We didn't actually finish the structure talk.
We didn't. Yeah.
We didn't get to the conclusion and the call to action.
Okay, so let's do it. Because I was saving it, I was saving it for the end. So let's talk about
the point being that what is your call to action? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to go, if let's say you're doing a talk on recycling, maybe it's you really just want them to go, you want them to go recycle. That's a very different talk than a talk that you want them to go purchase your product. If you want to go to purchase your product, you've got to seed that product throughout the entire talk. They got to know that the product exists, that it's for them. So that has to be in the talk. So that has to be from the very beginning. They need to know that that even exists.
And how do you do that without saying, and I'm going to tell you about this thing that you can buy?
Yeah. Well, that's the art. Mm-hmm. That's the art of it.
That's why people work with Nick Demos.
Yeah. Well,
they learn how.
And that's in the storytelling.
Right.
That's where the stories come in. Mm-hmm. That's where you're setting up these problems, and through the stories, you share the solutions without being like, and go buy it, right? Like it needs to be organic, and that is the art. That's what takes some it's like fusing a few worlds together to do that.
Yeah, it's whetting the appetite, right? It's creating a demand and desire for you to take the next step if that's something that you're interested in by the end. And this is the beauty, and you do this both through video and through stage. The goal is to have the person at the end be like, wait, come back.
Want more.
I want more, right? Yeah. Like encore, right?
Encore, give me more.
Yeah.
I often, people will think that their signature talk is, the presentation of all that is. And I'm like, no, that's your amuse-bouche. That's just what you're giving away for free. That's the little piece.
The appetizer.
You're not even barely an appetizer. You still have a main course. You still have the salad course. You still have dessert. You still have cheese course. You have, you've got the coffee service. You've got a lot that you can offer them.
I'm hungry now. And it's you're talking about the what, not the how, right? And the how is a whole other thing. Like that's the point. And that's if, let's say you're a service-based business or you have a product or something like that. We could talk forever, but I can't let you go without asking you about people who are at a level where, they've already got a really good business going, or maybe they're high up in corporate and they want to get to that next level where they can get paid to speak. What is your best advice for getting started with that?
Yeah, that is the way. Because if you see somebody on a big stage, no matter who they are, you take notice and you say, oh, they're important. Clearly, they've been anointed as somebody that's important because they're in front of 1,000 people or 2,000 people or 10,000 people to speak. It automatically sets you apart. It automatically makes you be seen as a thought leader, or what I call a being leader, because I think we're moving out of thought leadership into the age of being leadership. What I mean by that is that, we can get all the information we want on ChatGPT. Information is everywhere. Mm-hmm. How are you being as a human with that information? that is going to be drawing people to you now. So that's that embodiment piece on a stage. So if you're wanting to do that, it starts small. Like everything else, you start small. You're not gonna likely start with 10,000 people. That's probably not going to happen. You might get paid to do a talk with 50 people or 100 people, but get started. Start talking. What I know about the speaking industry for certain is that it is primarily referral based.
Mm-hmm. Who you know.
It's who you know. So get in the room,
Yes.
meet other speakers, be around like-minded people, and have a killer, not a good, a killer signature talk that's memorable, that people want. Because like all things, work begets more work, particularly in a referral business. Yes, there are CRMs, and yes, there are ways in which you can cold message people and get a speakers bureau, and yes. But the majority of the business is referral. So the first thing to do is to get on stage.
Mm-hmm. Even if you're not paid. And the other big thing is ask to be paid. And people are so weird about this. Like, you won't get a penny if you don't ask. And there have been situations I've heard about where there's speakers at an event and some are paid and some are not. And the only difference is the people who are paid ask to be paid.
There's also multiple ways to be paid. Not always cash. Yes, cash is good. I love cash.
Who doesn't?
Who does love cash? But particularly when you're first starting out, a form of payment is footage. So you create a speaker reel, because that's a invaluable tool. The minute you've
Sizzle reel, yes.
Sizzle reel, you've got to have one.
Totally.
Because that is your calling card. So you need as much, even though it's it's all about live, you need as much video as possible.
I told you, peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter and jelly here.
And in case people don't know, a sizzle reel, it's a short highlight reel, like a trailer showing you doing your thing. Now, some people might say, oh, I want to be on stage. I've never been on stage. I don't have video of myself on stage. So what is your speaker reel then if you've never been on a stage?
Yeah, get on stage and get some. Even if that means hiring a videographer, and renting a little space and getting on stage.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. That might mean volunteering for a organization and speaking at the organization and bringing a videographer. You can bring a videographer to any of these events on your own and have them film it for you. Mm-hmm. But that's why I was saying, like, with payment, you get that video for free. That might be the exchange. I've also done everything from, I've gotten somebody's Airbnb for free and I get this, there's packages.
Yeah.
Get creative. For me personally, there's one of two things. Either I need to know that my ideal customer is in the audience. That's the way that I speak for free, because I know I'll make sales from the stage. I know that I literally every time I speak on stage, I make sales. So I know that I'm going to, if it's an aligned customer. Or if it is not, then I must be paid cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll do a whole other episode on how to sell from the stage. For now, I just want to know if people want to know more, if they want to get the how do people find you?
Sure. So you can find me on all the socials at the Nicodemus, which primarily it's Instagram and LinkedIn, but at the Nicodemus, and my website is thenicodemus.com.
And I suggest you go and check out his speaker reel because it's amazing. And I will say that as a video gal, I love it. You have such a good marketing storefront for your brand. And I've seen you on stage. You are an incredible speaker. I'm so grateful that you joined us today on the Camera Confident podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I could talk to you forever.
I know. And we did talk forever before we even hit record. We were like, we should probably record an episode, right? So I'll have to have you back for sure. And I mean, we barely even scratched the surface. Nick, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to have you back again. Wow, if that didn't light a fire under you to get out there and speak on stage, or at least get you curious about doing it, maybe hit rewind and listen again and watch again, because that was pure gold. And I know I can't wait to start crafting my signature talk and really get out there on stages, because it's something that I really want to do more in the next coming year. I also have a lot more about speaking on stage in this episode. She's a public speaking expert and a business strategist, and she'll talk all about how to really get in there and find your first speaking gig and why you should never pay to speak. Check it out here.